Hi guys, I'm Tom Wormsley from Ministry of Eco-Education, and this is Sandy. He's a kestrel and he's come to remind us about nature and nature-based solutions on our little journey this morning. You might be thinking about environmental solutions as being quite a big challenge, climate change, ecological crisis, but actually that's just a natural concern to have. The solutions though, they all lie in working with your community and commercial businesses. So the story we're going to look at today as we go on our adventure will be about a guy called Dale Vince. And Dale Vince set up Green Britain Foundation. He's my ultimate boss, and he is a philanthropist and someone who's determined to solve the problem of sustainability with business solutions, and that's helping people create green careers. So let's look at, first of all, energy, transport and food, and look at some business and community-based solutions to those. Okay. So if you've got my email address up, I'd like to hear some solutions and some answers, and then I might come and visit you in your school. Put your hands up if you think we should continue our adventure in the canoe. So I went for it. I'm in the canoe on the pond. So we're going to start by looking at food, energy and transport and the impact that they have in this country on our carbon footprint, which is our amount of emissions we create, which, as we know, creates the climate change around our planet. As the carbon emissions go up into the atmosphere, they create a blanket around our globe, and that's creating this greenhouse effect and warming our planet and creating extreme weather. Do you want to hear it from the man himself?
What are the big problems? Fossil fuels and animal agriculture. They manifest in our lives in three ways: energy, transport and food. It's how we power our homes, it's how we travel, and it's what we eat. And 80% of all of our personal carbon footprints in this room, and of every business of every size actually, is from those three things: energy, transport and food. So I would say, look to how you power yourself, look to how you travel, look to what you eat, and see what you can't do.
So that was Dale Vince, who we talked about earlier. He set up the Green Britain Foundation. He set that up with the profits from Ecotricity, which is his company. So he used to be a traveller, and then he decided to set up a company that would supply green energy, so renewably sourced energy, into people's homes. He then set up a car charging system up and down the west coast of Britain so that people could easily recharge their electric cars, and made it easier for people to move into electric cars. So if we're going to carry on talking about transport then, it would be good if we could have a really good rail network and obviously have more electric cars, and then we could get petrol and diesel off the roads. That would really help. Plane travel is the big one though, partly because when planes are emitting greenhouse gases, they're doing it in the atmosphere where the greenhouse gases have their biggest effect. That's partly why. So if we move on to food is an interesting one. So the impact that we have in our choices around food are both big but tangible. They're big in that we have to think about the whole process of producing the food. So the bananas, they may be fair trade, which is helping society, and climate change and climate justice are very closely related. Coming by ship is much better than coming by plane. And so actually bananas themselves aren't so bad. Interestingly, an apple at this time of year might have come from New Zealand, 12,000 miles away, because it's summer and our apples haven't formed yet. So you have to check where things have come from to get the whole food process. And then of course how it's made. So here's some organic yogurt. And if it's organic, then we know the impact on the ecological situation is way less. And finally, if it doesn't involve dairy and modern farming practices, and you go for an alternative meal like oat, then you know that that's massively reduced your impact. I do a milk workshop, and it's called Milk Tasting: Changing the World at Breakfast, One Pint at a Time. So if you look at the food that you choose every morning and make a choice that's going to help the planet and tastes all right, then you're going to have that little impact every day over a long period of time, build up into a really big impact. Last but not least, I forgot chocolate. This is interesting because chocolate is sometimes grown in Central Africa, and then it's shipped all the way down to the coast to a processing factory, and then it gets shipped from there up to Northern Europe where it gets turned into a bar, but then the bar might get shipped to England to be packaged, and then that package has to get to your shop. If we move on to energy is interesting because all of us, businesses and at home, are using more and more energy with our electrical goods and trying to heat our homes. So if you're able to source your energy from a sustainable source, then you're going to have a way less impact on the planet. And that's just a question of switching your provider. No more complicated than that. It's interesting to think where energies come from. How is it produced? And in this country, you can check on National Grid Live at any moment and every day where it's coming from. And the percentage today from sun was 34% and 14% from wind. Britain is one of the best at producing a high volume of energy from wind because we've got offshore wind and onshore wind turbines. So if we look at community and commercial business to help with solutions, in our community, you can make a mini grid now. You could have one turbine and a whole lot of solar panels and pool that energy into one battery, and 10 homes can run off it. If we're looking at commercial solutions, then again, Dale Vince, who set up Ecotricity, showed us a solution where he created a business, the first business in the country, supplying green energy into our homes and supplying the same energy for people to charge their electric cars up and down the country. And finally, Dale also bought Forest Green Rovers. And that was partly so that he could turn it into the greenest football club in the world. And in terms of their food and energy consumption, the energy is all created on site by a wind turbine and by solar panels. The food is all vegan, so they use pea protein made from the pea plant and totally organic on the football pitch. In fact, they even process the pea, as in the wee-wee, from their supporters, and they put that onto the pitch. So there's the community, as in the football club and all its fans, working together and being given a totally green solution. So now, if we look at society, waste, water and nature as our final themes. Society is obviously leads into what we talked about before about community. And the more people you involve with challenges and solutions, the more diversity you bring, the quicker you'll find solutions. This society created this climate and ecological challenge we're facing. It's unlikely that this society is going to be the one that fixes it. But society alone won't work. We're finding at the moment around the world that businesses are leading the way and doing some amazing things that you may not have heard about yet. They might be needing to upscale them. So let's talk about waste. It's a big one and it's an important one. If we back right now and look globally, that the wealthiest 1% with the best lifestyle, they produce 2/3 of the climate impact. So the carbon footprint and the effect on climate change, 2/3 of that comes from the wealthiest 1%. Amazingly, to be in that 1%, you just need to be earning over a living wage. The fact that we waste 1/3 of our food, for example, means that everything we talked about so far on the other side of the pond, about how something's produced, becomes magnified if it's just wasted anyway. So in society and in schools, we often talk about reduce, reuse and recycle. But recycling is definitely the least effective. It's actually often shipped abroad using mass transport before it's sorted. And if there's any impurities in it, it tends to get binned into landfill. So recycling seems like a good idea, but reality is it doesn't work quite as well as we think. If you can reuse something, then you're helping it not go to landfill. You're stopping something else being produced to replace it. But ideally, we need to use less in the first place of everything. That's going to be one of the crucial ways that we come up with a solution to the climate and ecological challenge, is to reuse less of everything. So as an example, let's look at plastic. So can you guess, put in your email to me, what percentage of plastic do you think has been produced in the last 15 years compared to the whole of time? So ever since we've been producing oil and turning it into plastic, what percentage do you think was produced in the last 15 years? Well, I tell you, it's 50%. So moving on to water, and water obviously is a big part of our story today, but it's also a sink for pollutants from all our transport and all our industry, and for carbon dioxide. So that's a solution, right? So if it's sucking carbon dioxide out of the air into the oceans, then it's helping to reduce climate change. We haven't really respected that, and we haven't acknowledged that the oceans are nearly at capacity for the amount of carbon dioxide they can absorb. So they're starting to go acidic. But yeah, water can be quite a spiritual thing for lots of indigenous groups and more traditional cultures. Very important. Fresh water is becoming a very rare resource these days. We need to really look after it. So finally, let's talk about nature and the natural world. So nature gives us clean water. It also cleans our air. We also get our medicine from nature. We always used to, but we still have some key ingredients in medicine that you get in pills and tablets. Still comes from the natural world. We get our food, obviously, from nature, more than you realise, because actually a lot of things grown in soil that we didn't create, and the soil is part of the natural world. But anything that's grown out of the soil, obviously all the fruits and vegetables. But also we get shelter from nature. So anything that involves wood, if you check around your school, All that wood grew in the natural world. And finally, we get well-being from nature. So if you were fed up at the end of a school day and went to your local park, and after a while you found yourself feeling a little bit easier, a little bit calmer, that's something that was gifted to you by nature. So you can imagine that communities are realizing that their green spaces are really crucial for well-being, and businesses are working out that they actually need to respect biodiversity, because at some point in their supply chain, they're going to be needing to make use of the clean air, clean water, food, medicine, shelter that we get from the natural world. Some people are doing some quite inventive things. So Dale Vince is pulling carbon dioxide out of the air and turning them into diamonds, which are made of carbon. So they're called sky diamonds. They're no cheaper, I'm afraid. One of the beautiful things about nature too is that it has its own solutions built in, which has taken millions of years to work out. So we know that if you give nature space, it will thrive. And by thrive, we know that means a big mix of species and a big mix of habitats. That's known as good biodiversity. So in a minute, we're going to go over to Forest Green Rovers football ground, where we talked about their commercial and their community solutions. In there, they've done some amazing rewilding work. Before we go and look at that, I'm going to go for a quick explore and have a see if I can find any birds' nests on this island here. I think there's a moorhen's nest on the island. Oh, no!
So we've got Tom here from the Ministry of Eco Education, who's going to talk to us a little bit about nature. Why is it so important, Tom? Why is that nature so important?
First of all, respect to you guys for having a wild area right next to your pitch. I really admire that. And we know that a strip this wide is a really useful habitat. So actually, if you give nature space and let it do its own thing, it will introduce an incredible range of species, which we call biodiversity. Not many football clubs talk about biodiversity on site. It's really quite special. The more rough ground you have, the better. And so if I bring my Kestrel in, I'll show you the kind of thing you'll get if you have enough rough ground for small voles, small birds to live in that area.
Tom, we get a lot of unique visitors at the New Lawn, being who we are, but this is the first time I'm stood next to interviewing a bird.
Nice. This is Sandy. So his parents were injured in car accidents and he's a rescue chick, and he lives wild around my home. He's important because he's a top predator, like this stuffed hedgehog. It's not a real hedgehog. These guys are top predators. If you've got these in your grounds, then you know, like a shark on a reef, that you've got plenty of food around. They're like keystone species.
Amazing. Thanks, Tom. I think we'll let Sammy have a little break from media duties, right?
I'd like to give Dale Vince the final word. Listen to how convinced he is that communities and commercial businesses can drive the change we need to be more sustainable, to make Britain a greener place to live, without putting too much pressure on the individual, especially during a cost of living crisis.
Investing in renewable energy is about jobs, is about a resilient economy, energy independence. These resonate with people better. Electric cars are about air quality. Plant-based living is about our personal human health and that kind of stuff. And I think these are the ways to communicate with people to get them on board. And when we solve these issues, we solve the climate crisis as like icing on the cake.
So Sandy and I really appreciate you coming along on our adventure. We talked about how we can use community and commercial ventures to help come up with sustainable solutions. I hope you guys go on to work with your communities and to have some kind of a green career in any area of life where you use your commercial powers to come up with some solutions. So thanks a lot. I hope you guys go out into your school grounds and create some beautiful green spaces. I think you're going to work on some new habitats for more wildlife to live there, and that would be better biodiversity. Sandy and I would really appreciate that. Maybe we'll come and visit you.